Hi, good evening. My name is Leanne and I'm with the Clovis Unified Family Resource Center, and I'd like to welcome you to tonight's presentation on twice exceptional children and how we can support them. So first, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about the Family Resource Center. I apologize if you've heard this before, if you've been to our other webinars, but for those of you that this is your first time joining us, I'd like to tell you what the Family Resource Center does and how we offer support to families. So we're housed with the early intervention team with our school district, birth to 3, called City Kids. I help families navigate the IFSP process, understand their parent rights. We also help with that transition at age 3 to school-based services if that is applicable. And then the Family Resource Center continues to serve families all throughout Clovis Unified who have children either in special education, have an IEP, or even families that have a concern or don't understand how to go through the assessment process, who to turn to for help. So again, we serve families birth to 22 throughout Clovis Unified. So one of the things we do are these parent workshops. We offer materials to families that help educate them about their parent rights, and we act as a liaison, helping families get connected to resources either within the district or out in the community. So again, here's my contact information, and please feel free to reach out. All right, moving along, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. So we are going to use the chat feature for questions. If you have a question as we go throughout the evening, just put it in the chat and we will be monitoring that as we go along. Settings. We have the video off and mics off to help limit distractions. And handouts will be posted in the chat box. Also, there will be a follow-up email going out to everyone who attended tonight, and I will include a copy of the PDF at that point too. You do not have to print out the handout to follow along tonight, but if you would like to, just know that they're available. Survey. All right. Everybody's funded by grants, right? So if you could please fill out the survey tonight. It does help with our funding, but it also is that source of information for us to know, is this meeting your needs? What can we do to improve? What did you like? And so we value that feedback. So you will see a link at the end of tonight for that survey. And again, it will also be included in that follow-up email. Certificate of attendance. If you are interested in that, you will also see that in the follow-up email. It's blank. You'll be able to fill in your name. It will be sent to the email address that you registered with. And just a side note, this webinar is being recorded and you will be able to view it at a later time this week on the Family Resource Center YouTube channel. All right, this is the information about the Clovis Unified website where you can find information and resources under the special education department. That being said, if you are not in Clovis Unified, please check out your district's special education page. You might find really good information on there about your community advisory committee or different resources that are available. But again, if you are in Clovis Unified, this is where you'll find that information. And lastly, this is the disclaimer that this presentation is for educational purposes only. The views don't necessarily represent the position of the Clovis Unified School District, and nothing in this presentation is legal or medical advice. That being said, I'm so grateful for tonight's presenters. This panelist has a wealth of information to share with us, and I'd like to turn it over to them at this point. Let's get started. Thank you.
having autism, ADHD, they could be having autism, ADHD, they could be having learning disabilities, emotional disorders, any other disability as defined by federal or state eligibility criteria, and it could be one or more. And the subject or their creativity or their high ability could be demonstrating in math only, or it could be demonstrated in multiple domains. These disabilities and high abilities combine to produce a unique population of students that we are referring to as 2E, who are easily overlooked and have a nurtured talent because of the fact that they quickly get overlooked. And we're going to dive into why they get overlooked. Tina, if you could, sorry, Bonnie, if you could move to the next slide. It's because of that paradox of potential and disability or learning challenges, it becomes difficult for them to navigate. For example, you'll find a child that is in elementary school, but maybe reading at 12th grade, but will not be able to write any notes in class, or even in middle school, and maybe reads at a really high level, but is not able to take notes. It could be the child who is able to do math problems in their head. They see it and they look at it for a bit, then they tell you the answer. But if you ask them to explain how they got there, they're not able to express themselves, or they can't be able to actually calculate something that is formatted in a certain way. And you find others who are able to comprehend really complex ideas, but function way below their age. One researcher, Kanaday, in his book, The Masking Effect, says that it is often that these differences in high academic abilities and disability impacts the academic output and doesn't match conceptual understanding. The child begins to compensate using their talent areas or their disability, so that one manifests more than the other. So maybe you'll see more of that ADHD coming through instead of the talent that they have or the high ability that they have. And at any given time, you don't know what is at play. This was researched by Maddox and was found that there are no absolutes for these children. You can't say they're ADHD without saying that they are also high ability. You have to take into consideration both of them. Hence, they encourage teachers and parents to look out for large discrepancies between abilities and their heterogeneous achievement patterns. So we are going to spend a little bit of time reflecting here, and I'm going to pass it on to Bonnie to walk us through that.
Okay, so as we're getting started with our conversation about twice exceptional students, we're going to take a little bit of time to reflect. On the next slide, I'm going to show you a set of pictures. Choose one picture that reflects your thoughts about twice exceptional children, and then take your time to think about it, and then write in the chat, twice exceptional students or children are like blank because blank. And we will post that. Did somebody put that in the chat already?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, thank you. But wait, I don't want anyone to hit send until I say waterfall, and we will get a waterfall of all of our comments. Are we ready?
So we do not hit send, we just start typing and then
send. What you want to do is choose one of these images here and complete the sentence. Twice exceptional students or children is or like blank because blank. Ready? Yeah. Waterfall. Oh, wow.
Oh, so I got some direct messages, so I may have to read those ones. It happened by mistake.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so these are really interesting. So twice exceptional students are like onions because they have layers. Thank you for that. And then we have twice exceptional students are like hot air balloon adventures because they have unpredictable surprises. And then the rest, I think you can see.
Wow. Great. So, did you know that there are over 17,000 species of butterflies? And their only common characteristics are their colors, patterns, and they're ready to fly. And they all undergo metamorphosis. This is just like twice exceptional students. There's so many different types. There's so many different types of twice exceptional students. The Gifted Development Center. Did I skip a slide? Yes, I did.
Yes,
The
you did.
Gifted Development Center developed a checklist for recognizing twice exceptional children. The checklist is not designed to diagnose disabilities, but is helpful in recognizing some of the common characteristics of twice exceptional children. And you can see some of the ones that they list there. There is, in fact, no single defining pattern or of characteristics or test scores. Nevertheless, it can be safely said that twice exceptional kids display strengths in certain areas and weaknesses in others. Common characteristics of twice exceptional students are their outstanding critical thinking and problem-solving skills, above average sensitivity, causing them to react more intensely to sounds, tastes, smells, etc. A strong sense of curiosity, the low sense of self-esteem because of perfectionism, poor social skills, strong ability to concentrate deeply in their area of interest, difficulties with reading and writing due to cognitive processing deficits, and perhaps behavioral problems due to underlying stress, boredom, or lack of motivation.
All right, so if you are tracking like the differences with these children, there's one word that should remain in your mind whenever you're thinking about whether or not you're dealing with a 2E child, and it is asynchrony. Asynchrony is the buzzword. It is what you're able to see immediately in a 2E child, where you wonder, why does this child behave like this, yet they are capable in a certain way. And what we're going to do is we're going to dive more into asynchrony and brain function at future webinars, especially when we have some of the experts that have been studying the brain a lot more and brains wired differently. But for today, I wanted to highlight some characteristics that were found in 2 recent studies to be able to consolidate what Bonnie just shared. The first study, which was done in 2020, and is the first of its kind, where it compared average students, highly gifted students, and 2E LD students. So it compared the 3 of them and was seeking to describe the cognitive and achievement characteristics of these students. And what they used is standard criteria that examined which criteria were not usually very self-evident. And what Maddox found was that 2A students, like their gifted counterparts, had really high scores in verbal abilities, fluid reasoning, and comprehension, yet their short-term working memory, auditory processing, and long-term retrieval was average. Some of them, of course, were a little below average. Some were close to their gifted counterparts, but the majority, about half, were average. The most important thing to note, though, was that in this study, the one thing that stood out was that many of them demonstrated deficits in processing speed and were actually below the average, below the general ed population and below their peers. In the other study, which was a systematic study of 23 publications, it revealed 18 uncognitive characteristics. I've only picked out the top ones that they discussed in their discussion. They captured both the negative and positive characteristics. What they found was that these students showed a lot of curiosity and eagerness to learn, despite the vastness of strong negative feelings and stresses experienced in the academic situation. And I can't even begin to imagine what it will be like now that children are back in the school environment and what they may be experiencing. It wasn't easy on Zoom. It's not going to be easy in person after not being around people for a while. Many of them were striving for self-sufficiency, trying to be independent, yet had really low self-confidence and were withdrawn. What's interesting is that although they were negative towards school because of the stress that they were going through, they had a really positive attitude towards teachers who focused on their talents. And overall, they also exhibited a high degree of frustration due to discrepancies between their high potential and low school performance. And actually, this last trait was across all of them, where they did share the frustration because they know they can, but somehow their brain doesn't work to be able to deliver what is being required in the school setting. So we're going to discuss a little bit more about school, and Tina will be picking up here and sharing about the 2E children in the classroom, but I'm just going to go through 2E children in the home. And as I mentioned, Caroline, who's not yet here, is serving on the SANG board, and SANG stands for Supporting the Emotional Needs of Gifted, and it also includes those who are twice exceptional. And the word that is most commonly used when you attend a SANG meeting, and I'm actually a trained SANG facilitator, is my child is just intense. And what parents see is a lot of asynchronous development, oscillating between having such adult concepts and having these intelligent conversations to acting way below their age, almost like a 4-year-old. And then they have this high intellectual capacity. A lot of times they need a lot of support from their parents in learning, in social interaction, almost like you don't only organize the play date, you have to be there to say, you need to say hello to somebody. You need to say, what do you do? Are you interested in this? Kind of trying to help them engage. And you don't find that you need to do that with a neurotypical child. And then a lot of them will also have sensory processing challenges that whether it could be visual or physical, touch, everything in different ways. And that's what parents tend to report. And Tina, moving to the classroom and spotting them in the classroom.
So there's 3 things that we typically look for as educators within a classroom. And these are good things for parents to know when you're advocating for your child, because these also might be things that you'll see at home in terms of that crossover. So one is a student is already identified as gifted and talented, but they're struggling with achievement. So maybe they've had really strong high cognition scores, but their academic performance isn't high in one or more areas. And like Jeanette was talking about with the masking, maybe their gifts are strong enough that they're helping them kind of cover and figure things out. We've actually seen this with a lot of people with dyslexia. They're able to compensate and kind of keep up, but they're not actually thriving and performing to their full potential. The other area is a student identified with a learning difference with exceptional strengths that have not yet been noticed or addressed. We see this oftentimes in special ed. Maybe a child has been identified with ADHD, perhaps they've been identified with autism or dyslexia, but their areas of giftedness have not yet been seen, right? There's areas maybe you see a little bit of strength, but no one has gone out of their way to fully explore and see what gifts and strengths that child may have. And then finally, a student who appears to be of average ability, average areas of giftedness and areas of challenge are both masking each other. And there are a lot of 2E kiddos out there in homes, in schools, who are often missed because of that masking component, which can be really a frustrating place for them to be because they're not getting their area of disability supported appropriately. They're also not getting their giftedness identified. And I think this is something that parents often struggle with, and teachers, and the kids in particular. So this is a video, and this is geared primarily towards educators. However, as parents, I'm sure if you have a child who's twice exceptional or you've had a wondering about that child, you may have sat down in a parent-teacher conference before and had a teacher share, I have seen your child do this amazing thing, right? Or your child is so verbal and so extremely articulate, but for some reason, they just don't put that down on paper. So this video just kind of gives a glimpse into what teachers may see in the classroom. And I also think it helps promote some understanding of why our twice exceptional children can be missed in a typical classroom. Go for it, Bonnie.
At this point in your career, you have come across this kid. You know, the one who most can't seem to figure out. The quirky but smart one. The great kid who asks higher order thinking questions, yet cannot read at grade level. A difficult child whose emotions take him away, yet he's solving problems in math that no one else in the entire class has even thought of. The kid who struggles with sitting still, showing signs of ADHD, yet can be quiet and create the most amazing, insightful works of art, poetry, or music. The highly creative ones who are disenchanted by the educational system. They claim they hate school, yet can talk with you as an adult at your level and make you stop and think. Some of these can't read, they can't write, or even solve basic math problems. But you, as a trained and seasoned professional, see more in this child than the below basic student. You see something miraculous, something almost unexplainable. Their development is asynchronous, exceedingly high in one area, but tragically low in another. You know they qualify for GATE, but something is keeping them back. They struggle. Are all these kids alike? Is there something you can do? Welcome to the world of twice exceptional.
Thanks, Bonnie. You can go on to the next slide.
At this point in your career, you have come
Or
across,
play it again, either way.
you know, the one who most can't seem to.
As Bonnie's moving us on, I'll just kind of capture that twice exceptional kids can show some amazing gifts, but that area of challenge tends to get in the way. So if you have a kiddo that you've wondered about and you say, you know what, my child's highly intelligent, extremely creative, what's going on? What are the pieces missing? Or you have a teacher tell you, you know, I have some wonderings, but I'm not seeing these pieces. These are often some of the reasons why. So how to spot 2E characteristics in the classroom. And again, coming at this from the lens of parents, which I know most of you are tonight, thinking about those pieces, those different areas, because we all have different areas that are strengths and weaknesses. Most of us don't have brains that are completely balanced in all areas. The difference is for our twice exceptional students is it's a significant gift and a significant challenge. So giftedness can be in any one of the following domains: intellectual, creative, artistic, leadership, or academic. Strengths can include advanced problem solving, highly creative, vivid imagination, advanced ideas and opinions, superior vocabulary, sophisticated sense of humor, and a special talent or consuming interest. An example of that would be, say, an obsession with dinosaurs, or maybe then it switches to volcanoes, or then it's, you know, indigenous people. And so a lot of kiddos who are gifted have something that they gravitate towards, and then they soak up as much of as they possibly can about that topic, and they want to know everything that they can about it. Some challenges may include inconsistent academic performance. We see this a lot with our twice exceptional learners. Difficulty with organization and planning. Lack of motivation, especially if a child is bored or they're struggling to demonstrate their learning because of what's inhibiting them. Perhaps easily frustrated, a lack of engagement in areas outside of their interests. So maybe extremely tuned in for language arts when it's reading because they love to read, but tuned out in math because math isn't their thing. Possibly argumentative or opinionated. So as we embrace cognitive diversity and how brains are formed differently, one of the most important things is modifying environments for unique brains. And this includes careers and lifestyles tailored to individual neurodiversity. And when an environment is modified, this actually, research has shown us that it can enhance the brain's ability to adapt to the environment. So while I'm focusing on the school environment, I also want to talk about the home environment. And we see greater impact for our twice exceptional students when they're getting similar supports in home and in school. An example of a modification for the environment that is strength-based could be a student who has that area of passion or interest. So maybe they get through a difficult subject during the day, and then they're allowed time to go sit in a quiet spot and decompress. And there's a stack of books all on their topic that they're allowed to explore till their heart's content for, a certain amount of time. When we look at the environment, we're also talking about, does a child need headphones because of their sensory overload? What types of things might a student need to adapt, instead of assuming that children are going to adapt to the expectations we have and the environment we have in the home or in the classroom. It's us learning to adapt the environment itself to meet the needs for a child, to set them up for success and give them the supports they need to be successful.
So we find that there's 2E children need something that is uniquely tailored to them in order to be successful, as Tina was describing. It's, your typical analogy of a square peg, trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, then you're having the cracks all around it and wondering, well, why isn't it working? It worked for all the others who were round pegs. Or wearing shoes that don't fit and they hurt, and they're trying to look pretty, but it really hurts and you're not enjoying the dance that everyone is at. For those of you who have had those custom fitted clothes, when you have the perfect fitting clothes versus when you end up wearing either a suit or some kind of clothing that doesn't fit you, it's awkward when it doesn't fit and you're constantly self-conscious and uncomfortable and unable to function. And that is what the world of 2E children is that they need a program that is not just working on providing them with the basics that everyone else receives, or just providing support for their deficits, but it's also providing programs and education that develops their individual gifts and talents so that they can be able to attend more and access the education or information that they're being given, or even just instructions in the home setting. So you just need to be able to adapt the way you handle them versus your neurotypical children or students. And I'm going to let Tina talk a little bit about dual differentiation now, with regards to uniquely tailoring the classroom needs for a child, and then I'll talk about in the home setting.
So dual differentiation incorporates how we are supporting strengths and interests, as well as supporting those areas in which a child struggles. An example of this could be a student who is highly verbal but struggles to write, being allowed to do a text-to-speech option or sharing what they've learned verbally versus in writing, so that we are letting them use their strength to compensate for that weakness. Another example would be in math. If you do have one of those students who can do all the math in their head, I've worked with a ton of them and they don't understand why they have to show you and prove it to you and how they've solved their answer on paper. Instead of having them fill out a whole page, which can be daunting and frustrating, if a child's able to demonstrate mastery and you just want to make sure they actually have the skill, it's circling odds or evens, or just having them do a couple of them, letting them know, yes, I know you can do this in your head. I just need you to show me so that I make sure you have it too. So when we talk about a strength-based, talent-focused approach, we really want to give children opportunities to use the things that they're good at, their strengths and their gifts, instead of focusing just on the deficits, while still simultaneously supporting the deficits and trying to increase those skills in those areas. And if you have any, I was going to say, if anyone has any questions regarding dual differentiation, feel free to put them in the chat, because it really does depend on an individual child's needs and what they're needing to be successful.
Yeah, and we'll be diving a lot into several dual differentiation strategies during the next webinar, and actually sharing tools and ideas on exactly how that can be implemented in the classroom. And then switching gears to the home setting, At home, a lot of it is emotional and social support, although, of course, as parents, you're also involved in some of that academic support. But this is an area that parents find themselves having to play a social emotional counselor type role with their own children. And there's a nice decision tree. You can see it better in the handout. I'm not going to go through it today, but I think what you need to be able to know about it is asking the questions to be able to understand where they are and helping guide the child to be able to identify what is that feeling that I'm having and how do I need to act upon it and what would be the most appropriate action. And it takes a lot of time. It's almost like you have to give these kids a gift of time. And that is a typical thing with 2E children, right from when they're young up to when they get into college. You are constantly helping them move to the next level. From an emotional side, you want to make sure that you have a calm zone, a place where they feel like this is me, I can be free. There's no pressure from the world to make me like everybody else, and I can just be me. And you also set aside that special time that they can actually do that, or even just being with you and being able to connect with you as a parent. One really good tool is simply observation. You've heard it said before, and it is very, very true, that you know your child best because you see them and you've seen them since they were born, you've seen them in and out. And just being able to begin to build that emotional literacy so that they're better able to express themselves because they hesitate to self-express themselves. And like, we talked about the frustration that they experience. You kind of want to be on top of it so that you're able to know how much you need to be able to support them. On the social side, and this is a big one, especially as they get into the late upper elementary, middle school, high school years, is ensuring that they are able to connect with a tribe of people. Like this is who is like me, that I fit in with, and that understands me just as I am, both with my high abilities and some of my quirky behaviors, so to speak. And that really helps build their confidence and boosts and gives them just that feeling that I belong somewhere, because everywhere else, whenever they're out there, they don't belong. They're feeling that difference and they know that they're different. Engaging with their interests, that's what begins to mesh them with other people and helps them be able to know, to have some social capital to be able to talk about and to even be able to lead, whether it's volunteer opportunities and other kinds of things. You can even think about online communities if they're there. Of course, we're trying to build social skills as well. So you always want to also be able to have some of that interpersonal skills being developed with interactions with other children. All right, so Bonnie.
I get to do this one.
Mm-hmm.
We are embracing and celebrating twice exceptional students. And as we're supporting them without an underlying understanding about and patience with a student's asynchrony, teachers and parents cannot possibly create the psychologically safe environments in which these students flourish. A few weeks ago, I was busy procrastinating something or other by trolling through Facebook and came across a post from a friend. And one of those semi-interactive games, the games generated a response to the question, what flaw is actually your strength? And this made me think about our twice exceptional students and how often we spend time talking or thinking about their challenges, the fact that they can't sit still, the fact that the one student that I was talking about today was the parent was just talking about how they were so defiant. But as we face our challenges, we don't focus in on their strengths. By reframing our thinking about and changing our perspective, we can change our experience and those experiences that the twice exceptional children have every day. We're going to be doing a Jamboard activity. And in this Jamboard, I have written some common things that I have heard parents and educators say when describing their twice exceptional children. And we were going to do this as a breakout, but because there's only a few of us, let's do it all together. What do you think? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, good. In in our discussion, and we'll unmute everybody. Everybody can, we want to hear everyone's voices. What you want to do is look at the statement and then reframe that statement by focusing in on the strength within the challenge presented. I have samples in there. If we post this, the Jamboard, the link to the Jamboard in the chat?
Okay.
Somebody have that? I'm going to head to the Jamboard here.
Sorry, I posted it directly to one person. There you go.
Okay, got it? So everybody can see it.
Would you like us all to click on it?
Yes, please. So if I'm thinking about, and this, I was actually on my way home from work today and talking with a parent, and the parent was saying about that their child is constantly moving and often distracts other kids from their learning. And I took the opportunity to say, you know what? Your child learns with their entire body. They have boundless energy and vitality that they bring to that classroom. And has everyone else done this where you can go over and hit? I'm sorry.
It's asking for, I don't have editing access. So you just need to change the access. Oh, it says anyone.
I'm going in to do this.
Thank you.
Thank you. How about there? Now can you edit if you refresh? Is it working now?
Yes. And in case any of you don't know how to use a Jamboard, you're going to go to the left and you're going to click on, one to edit. Yeah. So your sticky note.
Yeah. Sticky note. And then you can type in what you want to type. And then hit save. And then I'm just going to cancel. And then you can move it around, put it in the frame as we reframe it. And go ahead and unmute and talk about this. We don't have to do it in isolation. We have about 7 to 10 minutes. Junia, you're the timekeeper.
10 minutes.
About 10 minutes.
So I think it is, so what you're trying to help us do is to say the same thing in a more positive way, looking at
focus in on taking what's inherent within this, the challenge that is actually a strength. Enthusiasm.
Since we have 7 people instead of 50, we might not even need 7 minutes for this, ladies.
Oh, I know. I love hearing how all these share these out. She can express her thinking through artistic, well-developed gross motor skills. I can't see everybody. I'd love to hear, with my own child, I would constantly get the nightly phone call or the email from the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
You can move on. I think that you don't need to go, if you want to look through, I think you can manipulate the screens. I'm going to go to the next frame. Yeah. Student can't focus on a single thing.
Mhm. I'm still not quite understanding how to get a sticky note.
Over here on the side, do you see the
Uh-huh.
little, right underneath the arrow?
It's
You
the fourth
just
icon
click on
down.
it and then it'll pull it out and then you just hit save.
Oh, okay. Oh, I think that's yours I'm seeing.
Did you find it?
Oh, because I'm on the screen, I'm on the Zoom instead of the actual screen.
Oh.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
going to be a problem.
Let's see.
So we have 4 here. The student has got many interests.
Go on. I reframed my glasses frames. I had fun coming up with these pictures. Student is inflexible in their routines.
Oh.
Intently interested in details.
That's a good one. He finds routine self-soothing, or the student likes consistency and predictability. The student enjoys structure.
Mhm. Focused and determined. Passionate.
I can't read
And
that
that they're
one.
passionate about what they're working on and wants to stick to what they work on best.
Oh, that is a good one.
It's a good one. Oh. Jeanette, are you doing that?
Yeah,
Making it for those of us who actually do need the glasses?
exactly. So that it's easier to read, yes.
Yeah. Finds comfort, yes,
In the norm.
within the norm. Yeah. Okay. See what's the next one. The next one has trouble with written symbol systems, decoding and encoding. I also had a conversation with a group of teachers today about a student. Classes start tomorrow for our students. And we have a student who is in the gifted math class, but is also receiving support services for math. And because she has trouble with that numerical symbol system, but is great at math, but not so much at arithmetic.
That is very interesting. And Bonnie, you know, I know that we're talking about decoding and encoding, and we have multiple people that are not educators and have not been exposed to some of these symbol systems and the perspective that you're bringing. So if you want to just kind of elaborate a little bit more, and
Yeah.
like the example that you just used, where it's the
Right.
same
So
subject.
somebody who's good at
Yeah.
math, but not arithmetic, can't memorize their math facts. is that is typical, or someone who's a voracious reader and can talk about all of the wonderful sorry, my words are not coming out very well, the intricacies, and will analyze what they're reading or what they're watching, but can't get it on paper. Though that's what we're talking about, is that you're having trouble getting it from the brain and getting it through the processing down onto paper, or in a way that people can understand and they can share their wonderful thinking.
Okay, so hopefully that's going to help us be able to begin having sticky notes, because I see that they've really reduced over here, but now, so hopefully we'll get a few more come in.
We can also move on to, if people are ready for that.
That one's one that really is, it's looking at what the problem solving is, and it's the metaphorical thinking, that they think in symbols, they think in images. Oh, I didn't fix this one. I was having problems with my encoding. Sorry. This is me procrastinating by going into Facebook. I just need to focus. What's the positive side of those students who we talk a lot about, that the executive functioning? And how is it that the fact that they can't seem to get their homework in on time? Is it because they're lazy, or is it that they have their own unique organizational strategies? Any thoughts?
Well, I'm thinking about the student that prioritizes, maybe actual learning in a way that, as you said, isn't necessarily, paper and pencil. There are a lot of ways to learn, and I think that sometimes it can be really frustrating for a student that is creative to have to be confined, to just one way of expressing themselves or fitting into that box. Like you said, it doesn't mean that they're not engaged or not, actively learning. It just may not, portray itself based on their learning style. I can think of, a student that was an amazing auditory learner. You could read novels in elementary school, but for them to be able to read it themselves, or to summarize it by writing sentences about it, was what that story was about, was nearly impossible. But the student was brilliant, and like I said, far above their peers as far as what they were capable of listening to. But so I think it's just thinking outside the box.
You're
And
right.
not, not just assuming it's a laziness, or lack of obedience or lack of will.
Yeah.
So Bonnie, if you'll go to, I'm sorry, Leanne, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm done.
Okay. Leanne, if you'll go to the next slide, we'll go ahead and jump in with some examples of that reframing for our 2E kiddos.
I'm going to go back to the presentation right here.
Sounds good.
Just
okay, so
full screen.
Yes, gifted and ADHD, and this is one that we often hear commonly. And it's important to remember our gifted children experience the world with heightened senses and intensity. Overexcitabilities are common in gifted learners, as is hyperactivity and or ADHD. I like to think of gifted children as a sponge. As a sponge soaks in water, gifted children are soaking in information. They're also soaking in what they hear, soaking in what they see. They're absorbing it all. And oftentimes that can cause dysregulation within a system. For some kids, that just means their bodies and their brains are always hypervigilant and aware. For others, that does manifest as hyperactivity and a change in the brain, which is ADHD. Unfortunately, gifted children and adults are often misunderstood. Their excitement is viewed as excessive, their high energy is hyperactivity, their persistence is nagging, their imagination is not paying attention, their passion is being disruptive, their strong emotions and sensitivity is immaturity, their creativity and self-directedness is oppositional. So we need to figure out how to have parents and educators come together to focus on those strengths to nurture the gifts that a child has. And one of the ways we can do this is by replacing the negative terms used to describe people with ADHD from hyperactivity and distractibility and impulsivity to positive terms such as vitality, divergence, and spontaneity to ensure the strengths of these neurodivergent learners and recognize them and nurture those needs. I think about, for example, a class that I was in today, observing a little 2E student who is brilliant cognitively, very high mathematically and with reading, but really struggles with writing and struggles with regulation and impulsivity. However, I could definitely describe him as enthusiastic, right? He's one of the first ones with his hand up when the teacher called on him. He also had a tendency to blurt out, but he wasn't trying to be rude. He was excited to share his knowledge. And so if we can kind of turn our perspective on these negatives and turn them into positives, we can also help foster empowerment within children and kind of reframe as parents, and we can help those teachers who don't have this awareness yet reframe as well. So whether a trait manifests in a positive or negative way, it is impacted by a student's environment. If a student feels demeaned or shut down, or that they're not allowed to be expressive and share themselves in the way that they learn, we might see a child trying to be disruptive, right? That if they're not allowed to stand up while they're working, if they're not the one who you say, hey, can you switch off the lights, or can you run this to the office for those kiddos with a lot of energy, if they're not given breaks when they need it, well, they might be more disruptive verbally, or they might be doing things that they shouldn't be doing. So whatever we do within our environment, same thing if a child is studying at home, and if they're studying for hours on end and their bodies are restless, if they're not being able to get that break that they need or that run outside, you're probably going to see a higher level of frustration. So it is vital that strength and interest-based programming be implemented along with appropriate accommodations to ensure success of our gifted 2E learners with ADHD, so that they can not just grow, but they can bloom and flourish. So leaning into your strengths with ADHD, we have several famous people you may or may not be familiar with. Likely you are. Bill Gates, net worth of, I think, $103.2 billion, the founder of Microsoft, also has ADHD. We've got two Olympic athletes in Simone Biles and in Michael Phelps. Both of them, Michael Phelps was told at one point he would never accomplish anything in his life. And the amount of energy he had, the amount of drive and perseverance that he had, look where he went. Same with Simone. The gentleman on the right was someone I was not familiar with. When Jeanette popped this guy in our slides, I was like, who is that? Well, we would not be here today connected on Zoom if it were not for him. So he is someone who founded Zoom and obviously is making a lot of money from that right now. So I just one of those things when we look at ADHD and those traits, oftentimes these are our out of the box thinkers. Our ADHD individuals often are entrepreneurs. They are often ready to go out and take on the world. And I think I missed Charles Schwab. He had ADHD and dyslexia, but didn't realize he had dyslexia, even though he'd failed a couple of English classes along the way and had great struggles until his son was diagnosed with dyslexia in elementary school. So all of these individuals have had challenges, but have still, they were persevered and they were able to use their gifts to accomplish great things.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Tina. And I just wanted to just make a slight correction that he didn't found Zoom, but he's in the system. Zoom.
Got it.
He is responsible for making sure that Zoom is able to be used all across the world globally. He's the Chief Diversity Officer. And actually, it's interesting that he's begun to look for ways to be able to make sure that people with neurodiverse brains are more integrated into that Zoom community. So here we are Zooming, and because of diverse brains around us.
Thank you for elaborating, since I did not know this gentleman. So is this one mine or someone else's?
This is mine.
Okay.
And we're switching the focus here to the autism spectrum. And you find that they've got multiple strengths that are also characteristic of being on the spectrum, such as those mentioned here. A lot of times you hear about the hyperfocus or the excellent memories. And what comes to mind when I look at this, I remember I used to teach piano. I haven't done so in the last 5 years or so, though I am teaching my kids. And the one thing that I had was a child who was extremely fascinated with numbers, could remember all the major events that had happened in every year back up to when he had been born. And I'm talking about like world events, not personal events. And when I taught piano and music, he would come and watch me and would just follow the pattern. And then finally, one day he came and he said, Miss Jeanette, can I stand here at the piano? And he did. And I just saw all of these things come together. The fascination with the count and numbers and being able to keep that beat, the sensitivity to the keyboard, just the way he played, you could just feel that he's touching these keys on the keyboard with a lot of just getting that sensory feel and being able to do it. But then the most interesting thing was how he had memorized the tunes just by observing me and was able to actually play without having ever gone to a music school. This was his first time touching a keyboard, and his mother was shocked when I explained it to her. And some of these things just get missed just because all that she had ever seen was that she has an autistic child that makes her life really difficult because of all the caregiving that she has to do and trying to be able to connect with him, but did not realize that if she entered his world, that it would be different. So you find that if you go to the next slide, Bonnie, that experts have observed these many different types of strengths. And of course, this is not exhaustive. You find the savants, a lot of people think of autism and they remember the savants who are out there, but they only comprise of 10% of the autistic population. There are systemizers. These are the ones that you find more commonly in our schools, and they are those computer programmers, Lego builders, mathematical, maybe engaged deeply in language, great artists, drawings, historians, etc. And lastly, there are those who have strong local analysis or who tend to have enhanced perceptual function. And actually you find that this is something that many of them have and could be able to cross back and forth. I think the key thing is to remember that we need to be able to support them to either be able to self-advocate, but we also know that autistic individuals struggle with self-expression. So also being able to meet them at the place where they are with their brain so that they can be able to thrive in school. So we are going to talk about leaning into strengths once again. And I am going to ask you to quickly write in the chat who you recognize here, just to see what names what faces you know that have autism. So in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, post, if you know anyone here. All right, I don't see anything coming into the chat, so I'll just get into it. Oh, there's one, yay, Elon Musk, there we go. So I did think that Elon Musk—
It came directly to me.
Oh,
Elon
what did you
Musk,
get? Elon Musk and who else?
Grady, PhD.
Okay.
I didn't see, did anybody recognize
Yes,
Temple Grandin?
yes, there we go. So Temple Grandin is actually the most famous person with autism and a huge advocate in the autism sphere. She is a PhD, as Bonnie mentioned, and has leaned into her perceptual functioning to connect and understand the animals that she loves and has worked with and studied for many years, as well as continuing to go out there and speak up for those with autism. My slide has vanished. Thank you. And then,
I'm sorry, I was trying to move my chat.
Okay, and I see somebody else noticed Greta Thunberg. That's awesome. So you can tell that people have been current with some of the news somewhere along the way. So on the left-hand side is Satoshi Tajiri. And this is an interesting one because that little character there, unless you have kids who've been into this, you don't know about it, but that's Pikachu with Pokemon. Satoshi Tajiri is the inventor of Pokemon. And when he was a child, his hyperfocus and fascination with collecting bugs is what made him begin to imagine, what if I helped other children be able to do this later on in life? And he connected with a programmer and with Nintendo, and there we are. Today we have Pokemon and Pokemon Go, and I'm sure that some of you have experienced as children who will not stop talking about Pokemon and talking about all the different Pokemons that exist. And that was him. He just collected a lot of bugs, and his parents wondered what he's going to amount to, especially having grown up in Japan, where they were hoping that he would become the engineer or the something else that was some kind of straightforward career. But this came out, and he's, of course, making his millions out of it. Greta Thunberg has definitely had that passion for our world and has been able to travel across the ocean, speak before a lot of leaders, get sentiments, both positive and negative, but she's stuck to what she believes in and what she's hyper-focused on right now, which is climate change. And then Elon Musk, in a Saturday Night Live recently, announced to the world that he has autism and is on the spectrum. And we all know him as, of course, a great innovator in our times, one of the founders of FinTech, Tesla, and you know the work that he's doing right now with SpaceX, which is actually work that he's been doing with another 2E individual who we'll be discussing in a couple of seconds. So just that thinking outside of the box. And I did not expect anyone to recognize the lady on the right-hand side. I include her because she's a savant, and she is a savant artist from Hungary. Her name is Henrietta. She's a writer, a poet, a musician, and also does a lot of art. She's not only autistic, but has got 3 autoimmune conditions. The one thing that you find common across all of these is that they are all passionate about what they're interested in, hyper-focused and creative. So we're going to move on to dyslexia. And Tina, you can take this one on.
So gifted in dyslexia. Dyslexia is a specific learning disability that is neurobiological in origin, is characterized by difficulties with accurate and/or fluent word recognition and by poor spelling and decoding abilities. And that's by the International Dyslexia Association. There's a lot of misconceptions that it's just letter reversals. That's not the case. There's often some challenges in the area of the brain that processes language. So in phonological processing, a lot of times our children with dyslexia have a breakdown. Dyslexia and dysgraphia, which is the difficulty of writing the written form of dyslexia, that's not a technical term, don't quote me on that, are not associated with intellectual challenges. Historically, there are many individuals with dyslexia who are gifted and talented in other domains such as science, technology, art, music, dance, sports, leadership, politics, math, and writing. And interestingly enough, too, there is a lot of research out that shows that when someone has dyslexia, there are common characteristics. This has been verified through research that a lot of people with dyslexia often are creative, often can see three-dimensionally, often are excellent drawers, builders, a lot of our architects. So there are a lot of strengths that we often find in our students with dyslexia. So some specific strengths, as I started mentioning, good at putting things together, three-dimensional spatial perspectives. I've worked with some students with dyslexia who struggle to read, but I'm like, that kid's going to be an engineer or that one's going to be an architect, and they blow me away without even being able to, without having to read instructions, say for a Lego manual. They're able to sit down and completely reconstruct something from what they see just from looking at a visual model. Interconnected reasoning, big picture connections, interdisciplinary fields, narrative reasoning, remembering facts, telling stories. And these are our kids who might struggle to remember their sight words, their high frequency words for reading, but they might have a phenomenal memory for those narrative reasoning facts or experiences, things they've gone through. Reasoning well in dynamic settings, a wide range of settings from business and financial markets to paleontologists or geologists. There are many, many people, famous and otherwise, who have been successful in spite of dyslexia, many of whom were twice exceptional. So they had an exceptional area of strength or passion and were able to thrive as a result. So some of our other language-based learning difficulties, in addition to dyslexia, are dysgraphia and dyscalculia. Dysgraphia, skilled writing, requires well-developed executive functioning. Dyscalculia, difficulty with fundamental math, such as counting, and dyscalculia and dyslexia often occur together and may result in challenges with understanding written directions, examples, and word problems. And if you're not familiar with the term dysgraphia, for kiddos who have dysgraphia, there's often a disconnect between their receptive reasoning, what they're understanding, and their ability to express that in writing. Their thoughts might come out jumbled. They might have difficulty with syntax, which is word order. They may have extreme difficulty with spelling, even if they have intelligence that's off the charts. So putting thoughts together in well-constructed, organized sentences that are syntactically and grammatically correct and with handwriting that's legible. If those pieces are missing, then oftentimes it's due to dysgraphia, and it doesn't have anything to do with intelligence, as stated before. Dyscalculia is, I think, often undiagnosed or unidentified because we focus so much on literacy that if a kiddo isn't reading, they're often identified and given an intervention. However, I've worked with some exceptionally bright little minds who struggled significantly with math, to understand math concepts, to be able to retain math concepts, have number sense. And if that isn't identified, their level of frustration gets higher and higher, especially when they're intelligent and frustrated, they're not being able to grasp a concept. So learners with language-based learning difficulties may also have delays in spoken language and visual processing skills. And oftentimes we do see crossover. I've had times where I've had reading intervention groups, where I've looked around the room and just about everyone has glasses on, because oftentimes there's a visual spatial component. Not always, but often. And we also see that with spoken language. I've had kids, elementary school kids, middle school kids, and adults with dyslexia tell me, while they hear things going incorrectly, when it comes to the output piece for some people with dyslexia, they have to turn things around to get it out correctly. So sometimes words might get jumbled on their way out. They might not articulate things quite the way that they want to. I think one thing that's really important to remember when we're talking about dyslexia and dysgraphia is that children can have some of the characteristics, but not all. It is going to look differently in how it manifests within children. Same with dyscalculia, and the strengths can be different as well, and so can the levels of severity of a challenge. So some of the strengths that we see with these kiddos are thriving in the workplace in terms of engaging their strengths and trying to avoid their weaknesses, material reasoning, engineer, mechanic, mathematician, illustrator, artist, medicine, landscaper. Interconnected reasoning, these are some of our computer programmers, our software designers, our scientists, inventors, musicians, our chefs, our therapists, and our trainers. narrative reasoning, novelists, poets, counselors, teachers, coaches, game designers, attorneys, and in sales, and dynamic reasoning, entrepreneurs, chief executive officers, business consulting, small business owner, accounting, and logistics. I think the important thing here to remember, whether you're the parent of a child who's struggling with one of these things, or you have wonderings about your child and one of these things, is remembering that it's important to address the area of need, but also keep focusing on the strength and helping them visualize goals, career goals, interests, so that they have something to aspire to. So leaning into your strengths with dyslexia, since this is one Caroline was going to do you want to take this one, Jeanette?
Yeah, I think a lot of these people are quite famous, starting with Oprah and Richard Branson, that I actually got someone, one of the attendees direct messaged me and said, oh, Richard Branson is a well-known dyslexic. And he's the other part of SpaceX that has been working together with Elon Musk. Amanda Gorman is, her poetry has been amazing. And of course, we heard some of that at the inauguration. And John Chambers, who's in the middle there, he has dyslexia and he is the Cisco CEO, the former Cisco CEO. And he's been able to use that to his advantage quite a bit. And then the lady there that's smiling with the blue dress is Dr. Carol Greider from Johns Hopkins Molecular Biology. She is the director of the Molecular Biology Department. The other thing about her is that she is also a Nobel Prize winner and has received multiple awards because of her work. So just moving on to the next slide. What you find is we want to help everyone to begin to think forward, because companies are already thinking forward. They're already actively recruiting these individuals because of their neurodiverse strengths. So this is an example for those who have autism. Companies are looking for them because they're highly focused, they're loyal and committed, they're creative and innovative, they're also passionate and productive. So they're finding that, well, if we hire these people, we not only have a long-term input from them, but then they're constantly producing. When you create the environment to be a space that they are comfortable and happy in, and they adapt interviewing processes so that they can be able to better find these individuals. The way they're seeing the strengths of these unique brains, one director put it as, a lot of the great, sorry, Bunny, you moved the slide. A lot of the great technological breakthroughs from Silicon Valley came from people who, if weren't on the spectrum, were pretty close to it. And some of these other companies that I've highlighted here is because they're actually reporting about what they're seeing as a great return on investment, on resource investment or people investment. For example, Specialist Turn is a software testing and consulting firm that was founded in 2004. 75% of its workforce that is diagnosed with autism. They've been relying on hiring people with autism because they find that they're able to work faster, have precision and accuracy, recognize errors faster, and can hyper-focus on some of the repetitive tasks that they need them to work on. Microsoft has said that it has an ongoing drive to hire autistic talent and spearhead inclusive design in driving their creativity and innovation across the business. And they're having really interesting programs that they're putting them into in order to be able to have more innovation come through as they hire this autistic talent. JP Morgan Chase, the investment bank, also launched a program in partnership with Autism at Work in 2015, and they report that the results have been nothing short of dramatic. According to the company, autistic employees are 48% faster and are up to 92% more productive than their non-autistic peers. And SAP, Vodafone, there's so many other companies, but I couldn't put them all here. They're also reporting that their autistic employees are giving them a competitive edge due to better productivity. And then switching on to dyslexia, this is an example that I found really interesting because of my marketing background and the fact that Saatchi & Saatchi is such a big marketing firm in the industry. The former CEO of Saatchi & Saatchi left and formed a company called The Garage. And in trying to be able to hire more creative individuals, he raised controversy by using this picture of Steve Jobs and posted only dyslexics need to apply. Of course, that took just caused a bit of controversy here and there, but his justification and the company's justification was that they were looking for innovative, different thinking minds, because he himself is a dyslexic entrepreneur, and he knew, having engaged with more people who are dyslexic, that they just thought differently enough for them to be able to get that competitive edge from a marketing perspective. Ernst & Young, this is the report on the right-hand side. Ernst & Young issued a report where they outlined the value of dyslexia in the workplace. They looked at multiple strengths and ranked them from strong to exceptional. And not surprisingly, they found that people with dyslexia displayed exceptional leadership qualities, were highly creative, very innovative, and had a lot of social influence. And then with ADHD, if we move to the next slide, some of the desirable traits that recruiters are seeking are this, and this is a really interesting one, because when we've been talking about the reframing, you see the child that's bouncing off the wall. That's a child that's able to handle a crisis in the workplace, because of the fact that they're used to jumping from one thing to the next, and is able to absorb it all quickly and be able to handle it all. And that's one of the things that they find very attractive to them. The fact that they, of course, have new ideas. They're very empathetic and intuitive. And as always, Errol, a trend that you're seeing across the board is that they're entrepreneurial. But most of the time, it's that ability to derive patterns and chaos and being able to navigate it and put it all together and then come up with a plan and execute on it quickly. So we have a call to action to you today. We're almost getting to the end, but we have a call to action for you. We're inviting you to actively work on conversations and on encouraging others to begin to have these conversations about embracing, supporting, celebrating every 2E child that you know out there, whether you're a parent or an educator, a caregiver, a friend. We want you to be able to help us make more news. For example,
Greta Thunberg becomes a climate activist, not in spite of her autism, but
I think we lost you, Bonnie.
you lost me temporarily. Greta Thunberg, I said it with such enthusiasm. She became a climate activist, not in spite of her autism, but because of it.
Now, this was a comment by Charles Schwab in an interview by Wall Street, where he was asked about himself, and he said, "I'm really good at concepts and visualizations, getting into a meeting with business associates, and I can process all kinds of stuff, as we were talking about, and get to the conclusion much faster than other people who would have to go step by step processing things sequentially. I think it leads to better visualization capability and conceptual vision."
Michael Phelps, ADHD, helped him make Olympic history.
And Satoshi Tajiri says that the autism helped him be able to create Pokemon.
Cisco's former COO turned a secret disability into his greatest strength.
And Dr. Carol Greider, Director of Molecular Biology and Genetics at Johns Hopkins, as I said, is a Nobel Prize and multiple awards winner, says, "I believe that learning to develop my compensatory skills also played a role in my success as a scientist, because one has to intuit many different things that are going on at the same time and apply those to a particular problem, to not just concentrate on one of them, but to bring many in laterally. Perhaps my ability to pull more information out of context and to put together different ideas may have been affected by what I learned to do from dyslexia."
Bill Gates, Walt Disney, Richard Branson, IKEA founder, JetBlue founder, CEO, Cisco Systems CEO John T. Chambers, Jim Carrey, Howie Mandel, all have ADHD.
And speaking about ADHD, did you know that people with ADHD are 300% more likely to start their own businesses.
Let's embrace twice exceptional.
Let's celebrate and support twice exceptional students.
Now let's do another waterfall. I have 6 different pictures this time. Let's look at the twice exceptional students' children is or are like, because someone posting that one in the chat, the prompt. Here's the picture.
All right, and we're almost done here. So we are going to be talking about twice exceptional children based on these pictures, right?
Yeah. Twice exceptional children, students, children are like because.
All right. It's posted. I don't think oh, sorry, you told us to waterfall. I thought that we were waiting for people to put it in.
Oh, okay.
Never mind. Okay, are we ready?
No, I'm typing.
Oh, okay.
And now I'm ready to go. Everyone else ready?
I love this. I feel like you could create a whole poster on this thing.
Oh, yes.
Statements
Are they going to everyone or just individuals?
You know, they're going to individuals. So I am going to try and read out some of them that I have gotten here.
Yeah.
And then what I found out is that that the way it's been set up is that the attendees can only directly message one of the co-hosts or the host. So
okay.
I think all of us will have to read out some of them. So
Okay.
Twice exceptional children are like a locked tricycle because their brains are ready to go if only unlocked. Twice exceptional children are like a typewriter full of ideas waiting to be expressed. Twice exceptional children are like music because they dance to their own tune. Twice exceptional children are like a cello because they seem complex but produce such beauty. Twice exceptional children are like colored pencils, different in every way. And then I guess the rest of you can read what you have on your end.
While you're doing that, it was a great waterfall. We want to hear from you. We want to share your thoughts. Before you leave, Junette, you're posting the survey in the chat?
Yeah, and Leanne will be sending it out as well later on, but we'd love to be able to hear from everyone today, just so that we know how to tailor this for the future for yourselves and your colleagues and your friends and family. So if you could just take some time to fill out that survey, we'd really appreciate it. And while you're filling out the survey, I am going to help us to conclude so that we can be able to make sure that we're able to finish at 8 o'clock. So if you just go to the next slide. Actually, before we go to the next slide, I think there are some questions that have come up. And I think each of the posts may have.
I saw one that was messaged about how are twice exceptional students' goals, IEP goals, crafted differently than the students in special education. Tina, as a 2E advocate, have you?
Well, that's a tricky
what have you
one.
done? And then I can talk about what we've done.
That's a tricky one to answer because it depends on the school district. It depends on the knowledge and awareness of twice exceptionality, and it depends on the awareness of or a state mandate on giftedness. There are places, there are schools that will include goals within the IEP that address both strengths and needs. And especially like in a private school, like the school that the high school Bridges, which we're in the graduate school of Bridges, but they do have a school for younger children for middle school and high school. And they do coordinate their IEPs with their advanced learners. In Colorado, our students are placed on an advanced learning plan if they're identified gifted, and they have an academic goal, and they also have an affective goal, and that's separate from the IEP. For example, if a student needs to learn a particular skill, the IEP needs to address that skill specifically from, say, the speech language therapist or the special ed provider, whoever's providing that. That being said, we try to have a representation of a gifted individual from the district at an IEP meeting, so that we include strengths and we include gifts as well, and we focus on that. And when able, we write a twice exceptional strategies plan in terms of who's going to be supporting the strengths, who's going to be supporting the areas of need, and how we can support both simultaneously to help a child be successful. I hope that answered your question.
I think that's great. And that's a great segue into our next webinars, actually, because at the next webinar, we're going to be talking about educating the 2E brain. We will not be diving into exactly how to write the goals, because we feel like that is very unique for every child, but we will be talking about strategies that can be used, and some of those can be incorporated into the types of goals that are being written for them. So on September 21st, we will be having Dr. Susan Boom join us for Brains Wired Differently, as we also look at the experiences that Tina, Bonnie, and a bunch of other people have drawn from the public school classroom, and also talk about the optimal environments for 2E children, both in the home and in the school, because there are 5 environments that you really need to consider at all times to be able to make it a good ecosystem or balance for them. And then on October 19th, we're going to be talking about more support for the 2E brain, and we'll be having Dr. Nicole Tetreault, who would be speaking from a neuroscience perspective and her experience as a neuroscientist and doing the research that she's been doing. We will be discussing more of the social and emotional and enrichment needs and how to be able to develop the talent of these children. And then on November 16th, this is one that is going to be highly driven by what you write in the survey that we've sent. So we really do want you to ask questions, to be able to share your ideas, because we will be picking or selecting the 2E brain experts based on the types of topics that we see are hot topics for everyone. So please do go ahead and complete the survey so that we can be able to meet some more of your needs and be able to address and make it more relevant in the future. And feel free to contact us if anything comes up. Our contact information is on the next slide. If Bonnie can just go to the next slide. Feel free to contact us, including Caroline, who wasn't able to make it. She sent her apologies, and she'll definitely be there the next time. We are open to receiving emails. You can also call me. I'm local in Clovis for those who are in the Clovis-Fresno area. And email, of course, works for all of us. I would recommend that if emailing, please ensure that you copy Leanne, just so that if there's something that's specific to CUSD, that it also gets addressed.
And I also had a question in the chat about if Spanish or other languages are available for translation during this. We do have that option to do translation during Zoom. If I'm, have at least a week's notice to set up a translator, I'm happy to do that. It's a lot of information, but we have some really good translators that work for the district who are up to the challenge.
That'd be awesome. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be awesome. And we've been discussing a lot of cultural responsiveness, and CUSD is very diverse in terms of languages and backgrounds. So that is something definitely to consider for the future. I will say also, if people wanted to also be able to hear from some experts who are also Latinx and have been studying 2E children who are culturally Latinx, we could be able to just point you to some of those resources. So I actually didn't put that here in the resources because I didn't think about that. But we put together a list of resources that kind of just continues to help you expand your information and education about 2E. We will keep adding to it as the topics change through the various webinars. So this is more high level and is in the resource list that was just posted by Leanne. And I just wanted to point out at the top left, the book images that we put, that is Dr. Susan Baum's book on To Be Gifted and Learning Disabled. All right, and then we are thankful for everyone who was able to make it out today. I know that we're a small group and that hopefully we're going to be able to have more people next time as we are able to bring in the Dr. Baum and be able to talk about the educational strategies.
Absolutely. And I don't, Tina, I don't see any other questions in the chat right now. But please, if you enjoyed tonight's presentation, I know I did, I learned so much, that please let others know about it. Be sure and share the flyers for it. And again, these will be recorded and put on the Family Resource Center the YouTube channel. So if they missed it, we can direct them to that and they can catch up with the session they missed. All right.
Awesome. And Leanne, I also had a comment about just making sure that we are able to include some information on Latinx experts. I'm going to say, please put it into the survey so that we're also able to just capture that and begin to trace it as we're looking at some of that information, because it's there. And, you know, it is what is starting to be called 3E. That's a new term that's coming up. And that is basically describing those who are ethnically diverse or language diverse and are twice exceptional, and some of the challenges that are faced because of the different cultural practices, beliefs, and even just the way they navigate the world of the disabilities or the giftedness. Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you, ladies. This has been such a breathtaking, refreshing topic. You know, I love the positivity of it and the reframing of looking at a child's strengths. Yeah, I see thumbs up. It just, as a mom, it warms my heart because I think that mindset is appropriate for all our children, right? And for ourselves. I mean, we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and let's celebrate what we do well, and we'll just keep working on what we struggle with, okay? But we can definitely focus on our strengths. We all can do that. So thank you. And again, you can email the Family Resource Center at familyresourcecenter at CUSD.com if you have any questions too. Thank you, everyone. Thanks. Have a good evening.
Yeah, and someone just also asked about the recording. It's going to be on the Family Resource Center website, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes. You will see there's a link to the YouTube channel on the Family Resource Center website. And again, feel free to call me if you have trouble navigating that and need to have a direct link. Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Good night.